Yeah, I think. Yeah, now we started. So, welcome to DSAI Undergrad Liaison and Postgrad Network Zoom meeting today. So today, I'm amazed that there are a lot of people here. Thank you so much for coming. And this time, it's our first trial to invite two speakers from India, though we have 4 hours and a half time difference. Thank you so much for coming, Garima and Rachna. So before COVID, we DSAI only could have, meetings physically among people who live in Ireland. But today we could go beyond the sea. It is wonderful that we can contact through the online around the world, isn't it? So I would like to inform you what the DSAI Undergrad Liaison and Postgrad Network are doing briefly, as there are many new faces here. So DSAI Okay, great. DSAI is Ireland's only association for researchers and practitioners working in the field of international development. And the activities, what these students divisions used to do was to connecting students and be motivated and so on. But now due to the COVID, we can't have physical meetings, but instead we can have these virtual meetings. And each time there are several speakers and usually students who are studying development issues. And you can definitely widen your knowledge. So I hope this platform is useful for all of you. So now I would like to introduce Sophie, who is a new convener of Undergrad Liaison. So can you introduce yourself briefly, Sophie? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm so excited to be here in my first official meeting with the DSAI as their undergraduate liaison. I'd like to put a little call out there to any listeners or to our speakers if you know of any undergraduate students who are really interested in research or who have a very specific topic that they would like to share with the DSAI network, to please get in touch with me and we can host them and showcase them to the best of our abilities. I'd like to thank the DSAI for welcoming undergraduate students for the first year. I think it's a really important step. Undergraduate students have a lot to offer, and on behalf of all undergraduate students, thank you so much. A little bit about me. I'm a fourth year international development and food policy student in University College Cork. Dr Lahiff is actually one of my lecturers, and I had Nita as a lecturer for a few classes before, so it's nice to see some friendly faces in the little Zoom squares we're being so accustomed to. I am a trustee with Action Aid UK, and I have been for 5 years. We work on women and girls issues in all across the globe, but mainly in the global south. And recently I work with the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement with the UN as their lead group member. And we work mainly on policy and governmental works, trying to get nutrition on government agendas across the globe. So that's a little bit about me. I'm very happy to pass it back to Amy to get today started.
Great, thank you so much, Sophie. So now I would like to pass the baton to our today's chair, Dr. Edward Lahiff from Cork. Thank you so much, Dr. Lahiff.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Sophie, as well, for those inspiring words. Hopefully, we'll all follow up on your suggestions, and we'll see lots more engagement with undergraduates. I think it's a really important part of our process. So I think without further ado, we should move to our invited guest speakers, and we're honoured and privileged, I think, to have researchers from India with us today on this platform. It's a great opportunity for researchers and development practitioners in Ireland and in India. And I don't know if we have any third countries involved here today, but it's a very exciting possibility. And I suppose it's very much in keeping with the spirit of development that we would share our experiences in this way and engage in a friendly and constructive debate. So it's a great opportunity, and I thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. So you're not here to hear from me anyway. I think we'll move quickly. I want to welcome Garima Meheshwari from India, who is going to present on her work on local level governance of global atmospheric commons in India. I'm sure Garima will explain it much better than I can. And so Garima, I'll give you, we have 10 or 12 minutes to present, and then we'll have maybe 10 minutes for questions and discussion immediately after it. So if it's okay with you, I'll hand over the floor to Garima. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, and good afternoon to everyone. Today I'm going to be presenting on part of my PhD thesis, which is still going on, and I'll be presenting on governance of global commons and the case of climate adaptation in the Bundelkhand region of India. I'll be sharing my theoretical framework, research questions, as well as some of the preliminary field results that have emerged so far. Now, the central concern of my study is based on the idea that existing articulations of climate justice, they preclude a substantive incorporation of the role of the public or the relevant community, which is actually very crucial to devising collective action mechanisms for climate governance. Now, to understand the role of the community or public in climate governance, it is important to engage with the framework of global atmospheric commons. I'll go into some brief background, a couple of lines about that. We know that global commons, the entire framework has become very important in understanding the mechanisms of collective action in the field of international cooperation, especially in environmental governance. Now, I won't go into the entire concept of global commons, assuming we are all aware of it, that these are resources which are rival and non-excludable. I'll come straight to the point that many of the major global commons, they play a very important role in strategic political intergovernmental contestations, so, such as debates over their ownership and jurisdiction. However, atmosphere as a global commons, it makes a slight departure from this general framework. It does not easily fit within these strategic political contestations at the intergovernmental level. In my thesis, I argue that this is because it does not directly contribute to the development productivity of the nation states. And neither does it constitute a kind of resource domain, like a productive resource domain, over which questions of, say, ownership and jurisdiction can be easily exercised. So instead of being a directly productive commons resource, the maintenance of atmosphere as a global commons, the entire problem of that is formulated indirectly in terms of provision of environmental sustainability by preventing the bad of environmental harm in the form of climate change. So the issue of climate change presents a unique commons dilemma. While contestations occur at the global level, their relative success is contingent upon implementation at the subnational levels of governance, particularly at the local level, at the level of local actors and communities, which is what I explore in my research. So unlike other major global commons, atmosphere has a very different incentive structure because its provision is actually bound up with spaces for the production of environmental harm. And since this kind of an incentive structure pervades all levels from the global to the local, therefore I argue that the role of community in the governance of global commons is extremely important to explore. And it's extremely problematic also. It's not that simple as has been put forward in various developmental discourses. Now, I'll just go into some brief points about what the existing literature says and the review that's been done. So the central question in commons debates, both CPRs as well as global commons, it is premised around what are the collective action mechanisms that supposedly facilitate or obstruct cooperation in the management of the commons. Now, along the lines that I've argued above, the present research, it attempts to explore this question, but it attempts to posit an alternative framework to actually go into this. Now, major existing conceptualizations of the global commons, they base their concept of the commons upon dual aspect of their materiality and distribution. And there are two strands of literature dominant within that. First is the institutional perspective on collective action and cooperation, and second are the political economy approaches that provide a critique of institutional approaches by emphasizing on how the commons have undergone enclosures due to processes of capital accumulation, demand for various regulatory institutions at the global level, and so on. Now, within the specific domain of climate governance, this is reflected through basically focus on institutionalization, like distribution and allocation of authority, functions, norms, incentives, and on the other hand, achieving various targets of climate stabilization through various forms, categories, and classes of resource allocation, such as through carbon sinks and carbon space, so forth. Okay. However, in my thesis, departure has been made. I have argued that emphasis on institutionalization and upon its political economy critique based on enclosure, it does not take into account so much. It does not fully take into account the role of the relevant community as an actor in actively directing the commons governance. Why? Because it exogenously constructs the community as a monolithic whole, as constructed in various developmental discourses in state as well as non-state actors. And this is especially so in the case of atmospheric governance at the local level, at the level of various climate adaptation initiatives that are taken at the local level. So now, in my research, I explore how the nature of the community is shaped by endogenous factors rather than exogenous governance discourses, and how that affects the management of climate-sensitive commons. I draw upon two basic frameworks. First is the relationship between common good and relationship with the commons. And second, particularly relevant to my fieldwork, is the entire argument about relationship between social policy and subnationalism, which in essence argues how community-based subnational solidarities, how they foster the common good and lead to overall better policy outcomes. This entire debate is applied to local level communities implicated in commons management to explain what are the nature of cooperative outcomes, positive or negative, to explain why they are so. So now, in the field research and drawing on existing literature, this whole debate has been concretized in terms of four meta factors, four meta endogenous factors, that is ethics, knowledge, risks, and culture, which are very crucial to understanding the entire process of climate adaptation at the local level. So in my field research, I examined these endogenous meta factors and how they interact with processes that shape the common good and determine the relevant public's response to climate adaptation. I'll go into the three main research questions around which my fieldwork has been premised. First, what at the local level are the patterns of commons ownership among the members of the community, that is commonly owned, private, or shared good? That is what I have seen. Second, what is the role of non-state and governmental actors in directing these ownership patterns and in directing and influencing community practices and norms? And third, I've looked at what are the factors that influence climate adaptation practices at the local level, which directly implicates the commons. So I have looked at the case of climate adaptation in 4 community organizations. I won't go into the profiles and details of these community organizations with which many of us may not be very familiar. And I'll just go into the case study that I've chosen. I've chosen the Bundelkhand region of India. The reason is, see, there are many climate sensitive regions in India. However, I've chosen the Bundelkhand region. It is a semi-arid region, and it's amongst one of these climate sensitive regions with high climate variability and successive droughts in recent years. Also, I've chosen it because of its very peculiar social structure and political institution. So it is characterized by a feudal social political structure and community relationships modeled along that line and responding to it. And also with very high dependence on the agrarian economy and a high degree of economic backwardness, as well as intensive patterns of rural to urban migrations. And these have been in place since last couple of years. Also, climate variability has worsened over years, temperature variations, rainfall patterns, precipitation patterns, and so forth. The data I'll not be going into. I'll come straight to the substantive arguments and aspects of my field results. Now, the field results revealed a peculiar structure of social organization that determined community response to climate adaptive interventions. First, the climate adaptive policies and approaches. of course, in line with India's national climate policy framework, which in my thesis I have explored what that national climate policy and framework is, and I won't go into the detail of it, but yes, that structure is mirrored at the local level also from the perspective of how local government implements it. So these climate adaptation policy and approaches, it emerged in the field that they're situated largely within the wider discourse of development, which precluded and accommodated instead of giving expression to diverse political articulations of the common good amongst the members of the community. Second, in the Bundelkhand region of India, how did this process play out? This played out as became evident after interviewing various community members, various members of state as well as non-state agencies. This was made possible through a very peculiar harmonization of extant feudal structures in the region with market-led interventions that have also proceeded successfully without challenging the existing social organization. So the region, the core that hinders the climate adaptation policy, such as extremely fragmented and unproductive land holdings. It emerged that various farmers and community members, the land holdings were less than 1.5 hectares, which because of which they can't get anything done. And none of the initiatives, they would really be economically sustainable in the long run. They would only be localized. Then there are various, also the region has a lot of indigenous tribes. So there are various tribal specific laws that make the sale of land extremely difficult. And as a result, they propel patterns of rural to urban migration. This was what emerged in the field in various cases. Also, finally, there are extremely complicated legal processes of recognition of community identities. So in the sense that these processes, they vary from district to district. So suppose in some village or district, according to certain laws, a community may be identified as a tribal community, and in other districts, the same community will not. So that again impacts the entire question of resource access, and all these factors together, they make the systematization of climate adaptation in core agricultural policy extremely difficult. So the result is that the climate adaptation initiatives, they have effectively become depoliticized in the sense that the responsibility has shifted from the state to various non-state agencies, and they have been put within the domain of this developmental partnership model instead of a legal rights-based approach, which would be more conducive to, say, the fostering of contestations over the common good. Now, in turn, and I only talk specifically to this region, not to the entire country, because it is a very localized question. So in turn, the various actors that operate in the field in this area, they have reinforced the existing community hierarchies that shape resource access. So as a result, in the interviews that were conducted, especially the community interviews, there were four broad trends of contestation over the common good that are visible. First, that among certain strands and certain communities, the notions of the good were largely uncontested and purely derivative in terms of economic value. Second, that they were contested to some extent, and they were articulated in the language of rights in terms of certain demands. Third, they were contested, but at the same time, they were culturally encoded in the sense that they were hampered or limited by various endogenous factors, hampered by conservative cultural enclosures. And fourth, that they were culturally encoded, but they were independent of exogenous organizational interventions. So in the first three, there were exogenous organizational interventions, but in the last one, it was completely devoid of that. And in the third one, of course, the entire process was very partial. Interestingly, the last two categories were tribal, they were indigenous communities of place. So their critiques, they would critique piecemeal livelihood interventions and insufficiency of institutional organization, which did not emerge in the first two discourses. So,
Garima, sorry to interrupt you, but I wonder, would you be able to maybe wrap up in 1 or 2 minutes? Just, I mean, I wouldn't like you to lose your most important points if you're just coming to those.
Yeah, I'm just coming and I'm
Okay, fantastic.
including the field research points. So yeah, finally it emerged that the crucial point was, yes, there were various commons management strategies, the climate adaptation strategies that emerged in the field, such as community farming practices and so forth. However, most of them were structured through modes of social segregation. Therefore, suppose in small villages, adaptive infrastructure was set up by community members themselves. However, it was different for different communities and varied according to caste, religion, and all of these endogenous factors instead of being a shared good. And this challenged the integrated understanding of climate adaptation as going beyond pure biophysical stressors and including within its rubric an understanding of how socio-political and economic stressors, how they enhance climate vulnerabilities. So yeah, so it was the dominance of endogenous ethical and cultural understandings based on hierarchical patterns of resource access that structured the respondents' attitude towards knowledge, risk perceptions, and solutions towards climate adaptation in the field. And this social fragmentation in turn prevented, like I mentioned in the theoretical background, it prevented any form of political organization or subnational solidarity which could foster the common good to productively evolve a concept of climate adaptation at the local level. Now, I am going to conclude that the observations, the overall general observations from the field, they substantiate that collective action mechanisms foregrounding the governance of atmospheric commons are significantly shaped by endogenous processes, as has been explored in the thesis, and that are constructive of the common good of the relevant public. Now, in the field of Bundelkhand, it is through the framework of plurality of goods and through particularistic moral obligations and the lack of political subnationalism that have resulted in processes through which these factors, endogenous factors, are tailored to questions of resource access. So, and this preponderance, it explains the entire why climate adaptation initiatives, how they are embedded within the political economy of the structure, and why they have not worked to the extent that they should have. So the research as a whole, it implicates how in the governance of atmospheric commons, the framework of common good provides an important alternative lens in politically contextualizing the socioeconomic factors affecting the local level community adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Garima. That was a tour de force. I hate to try to cut off a researcher in full flow when they are so confident in their material and so enthusiastic. So we really thank you for sharing, giving us a flavor of that, of your insights and your energy. So thank you so much. I'm sure we could hear an awful lot more, but I'm hoping that maybe now in a few minutes of questions, people will be able to draw you out. So I would just say to our speaker, resist giving us a lengthy answers, but because I really want to hear from some of the audience, but maybe you could just say a few words on any of the questions that come up. So I'll throw it open for a few minutes. I'm not sure, was that a hand, Martha, or an applause icon? But if anybody wants to jump in, then please feel free. Just maybe raise your hand on the camera or with the symbol, and I'll invite you in, please. Can't see anybody.
Edward, can I say something?
Nita, of course.
Yeah, thanks, Garima. I was a little lost in the language, I must say. But I just, somewhere in between, you did mention that it was not rights-based. Sorry, my whole PhD is on rights-based. So what would have made it very rights-based, you know, this whole process? A couple of pointers would be great, thanks.
Okay, yeah. So like in my thesis, I have focused, like I explained, that there are 4 strands of contestation over the common good that emerged during the course of the field research. So there were 2 strands, there was one strand that was rights-based, and in the initial part, while explaining the theoretical background, by the general field background, I had mentioned that basically the entire discourse of climate adaptation, it has shifted, the locus of that has shifted from state as an actor to various other non-state actors that have become, that are largely responsible for implementation of these initiatives. So as a result, it was observed on the field that the entire discourse has come within the domain of the developmental partnership model, which I have juxtaposed with the more political rights-based discourse, the rights-based model. That was the point that I made. So this emerged on the field. So yeah.
Thanks, Garima. Anybody else want to jump in there? I must say, if I just say a few words myself, I think the this embeddedness, as you put it, of, well, what we might think is rather technical and straightforward process, such as climate change adaptation, the idea of it being so embedded in, well, as you said, political economy, in the social, economic, political, and legal dimensions, some of them very complex and perhaps contradictory as well. That we are not dealing with simple agents who can be defined in one dimension, but both government processes, the political economy in which people are operating, all of these are complex, and people's reactions, people on the ground are gauging and measuring their own reactions based on what they understand, and on perhaps the very real social and economic constraints in which they face. So it's great to have this local level, fine-grained analysis of what could be a rather dry, high-level kind of discourse about what we all should do around climate adaptation. But to see it grounded in these social and economic realities, I think this is a great contribution, and I'm delighted that you're perhaps picking up on Nita's comment, that you're able to move so well, so easily between the kind of higher theoretical frameworks that you're bringing and your detailed account of the local fieldwork as well, which is certainly comes across as very very convincing. So congratulations and well done. If there isn't another, that was not really a question, it's an observation. So if there isn't another question, I have a feeling we might move on to Rachna. Rachna, are you ready to go? And we can always come back at the very end, I think, with any kind of cross-cutting questions, or if people think of something along the way they want to say. But I think for now, we should thank Garima very much, and we might come back to you. You can't go away yet. We might come back to you at the end, and hand over to Rachna, who will introduce her work, and again take maybe 10 or 12 minutes to share her thoughts with us. So Rachna, over to you.
So Amy is going to help me with the presentation. Garima, thank you so much for that. That was quite informative and detailed. And I'm sorry, mine might not be that detailed, and it's going to be a very macro picture of what I'm doing right now. And it was my intention to keep it that way. I'm still in the process of data collection, and I'll talk about it. And I was also trying to make it, from a very theoretical. I'll give you the background on Indian aid, but also I wanted to bring in the human aspect, or the PhD student aspect to the whole process that we go through. So it won't be as theoretical or detailed as Garima did, and we can talk about it once my presentation is over, if you guys have anything. So Amy, can you share your screen for me, please? Yes. So the title of the presentation is Thinking in the Box, and I'm going to explain why later, or it makes sense to you guys once I finish this presentation. I am a fourth-year PhD student at the Law and Government in Dublin City University. I started this PhD program in September 2017. Just entered my fourth year, so just got a year or so to complete it. Amy, next slide, please. So a quick checklist to show what I, or what, you know, just to make sure what I told Amy that I'll be covering. So a brief background on India's official development assistance program. What is it that I'm doing as part of my research, and this personal and professional journey in the last 5-6 months that I've gone through, especially after March with the setting in of the pandemic, and what has changed for me as I, you know, in my research. Next slide. So just one second, I'm going to minimize my screen a bit. Yeah, so so I can see the PPT. Yeah. So so India's official development assistance program, India is actually not a new donor or an emerging donor, as a lot of literature written mostly in the by the northern academicians have mentioned. Unlike I mean, like India and China, both the countries of global south have been providing aid since at least since the late 1940s. For India, it started off 1 year before independence. Our independence was 1947, 15th August. So 1 year before that, we had the Asian countries come together, and that's where it started off for us. And it's finally started getting implemented in 49 under various platforms like the Colombo Plan and the Asian Conference. Likewise, China also started providing early in the early 1950s. So the new, and I try not to, or I completely avoid calling India a new donor in my thesis. So as of now, India's partnership activities is with about 142 countries at least. And India doesn't like to call itself a donor; it likes to call itself a development partner. But just to make it simpler, I'm going to call it a donor here. So it's activities, and it also doesn't call its I mean, aid as aid. It calls it development partnership program. And so the activities are in about 142 countries. It ranges in different, it has different components in it. And for me, and a lot of literature divides the Indian aid giving process into, in phases into broadly two broad categories. This is 1947 to 2002. Where India focused a lot on technical training, skill development, and 2003 onwards to till about this year. And my research looks at the 20-year period, 99 to 2019, over four governments. So, and if you see the chart, these are the milestones that Indian aid program has covered over the years. 2002, the Development Partnership Administration was actually set up with more, trying to, they were trying to make it more like US aid or Irish aid or the DFID, but it's still embedded in the MEA ministry, which is Ministry of External Affairs. It's not as independent as Irish aid and US aid. DFID, unfortunately, this year it has been merged with the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Next slide, please. So some data on the aid it gives. So the components of the aid is grants, concession loans, technical cooperations, lines of credit. So this is mostly what it has. It also provides a lot of humanitarian aid, small development grants, which started off, both of these started off in the early 2000s. That's when the second phase started. But it doesn't count humanitarian aid as part of, like, it's not in the budget. It's not even reported in the annual reports as aid. It's just under each country it's mentioned, but it's not mentioned in the overall budget. The second bullet point, I think with this I wanted to show how much of the budget is allocated to aid program by India. 42% of the Ministry of External Affairs budget in 2019-20 was for aid. That's about 86 million USD. This year's is about 40%. The highest it has gone is about 59 point something sometime in 2013-14 financial year. India follows, it follows April to March financial year, so that's why the 2 years here. And then the distribution of aid reflects the foreign policy of India. So the three concentric circles, the closest is the South Asia and then immediate neighborhood. So if you see it on the right, it's an answer that was given to a parliament question in 2018. So it talks about how South Asia gets the maximum amount of aid, followed by the extended neighborhood, which is the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia and Africa. And then it's the global stage, which is Central Asia and Eastern Europe. And with Eastern Europe, there's a lot of technical skill development programs are happening at the moment. Next slide, please. So a background to my research, what I'm trying to do is to understand the India's policy narrative, what the documents like the speeches of the Ministry of External Affairs, the Parliament documents, the Standing Committee on External Affairs, and also elite interviews. I've spoken to some of the retired people who used to work, and to understand their narrative and how they define why India gives aid, what is the purpose, how do we see ourselves as a development partner, and then understand and then try and match it to the perceptions of people in Sri Lanka and Nepal. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that within South Asia, it's basically in the previous slide, it's Bhutan which gets the highest aid within South Asia. It's mostly for hydropower dams. Then it's followed by Afghanistan. India is the 5th largest donor in Afghanistan. It's built the roads and parliament there, and a couple of large prestige dams and other small grants. Small projects. And then the third is Nepal and Sri Lanka. So I picked Sri Lanka and Nepal because the first two I didn't want to study the kind of the hydropower. It's not something that I'm not an expert on that. And Afghanistan, of course, my supervisors wouldn't allow me to go there. So Nepal and Sri Lanka are my case countries. So what I've done is to understand what people who are involved directly with India's aid giving process in Colombo and Jaffna and some of the other parts of Sri Lanka. And then similarly, I was supposed to do this in Nepal, but I'm going to talk about it later, but I haven't been able to do that yet. And then talk to some of the local communities also. So it's 3 layers, as you see on the tick marks, where bureaucratic and diplomatic and policy environment, then the elite community in recipient countries, and then also the perceptions of the local beneficiary communities. So because I'm involving policy and community, and I'm trying to bring together a lot of, it's going to be an interdisciplinary approach and research where IR is involved, and I'm also comparative politics, because I'm hopefully trying to break it down between the first BJP government, which was headed by Vajpayee, then the 2 UPA governments, and then the Modi government from 14 to 19, how it differed, or how things were a bit different within these 4 governments. So that's why comparative politics comes in. And then the critical development analysis is for the community, where I'm trying to see, try to make sense from their perceptions and use one of the development studies theories. So yeah, it's kind of trying to combine all 3 and see where I'm. Yeah, I don't know where I'm heading right now, but this is what I'm trying to do. So next slide, please. So how did COVID impact my plan? So being in the box is being in this house. My husband and I were supposed to leave for Dublin this summer, finish my field work in Nepal in the summer and head back to Dublin, but didn't happen. And then I started off, this is first phase for me was the honeymoon phase, because when the lockdown happened, everything shut. I was like, okay, this is the best time for me. No emails from DCU, no talking to anybody, no attending anything. So this is the best time for me to sit and work and sit and write and be able to think what I'm going to do, and gave me time to think about the theoretical theories that I would like to use. And I did manage to write some bit and some policy papers and blogs. And then this is the annual review of DCU, which happens in June, July, and we're supposed to submit quite a bit of chunk. And because the fourth year, so I had to kind of, sorry. Is someone trying to say something? So yeah, but thankfully my supervisors and internal reviewers were pretty happy with what I've done. So that got done. And then once that was done, then there was this not doing anything substantial in terms of writing or even, just reading. And then the denial to acceptance stage for me was this. In March, I was like, okay, maybe I won't be able to go to Nepal in May, June, but hopefully I'll probably, get to go in August, September. And, I've never experienced a pandemic. And I think I was too naive to have these, plans. And even to this day, I tell my supervisors, give me 1 more month before I finalize. And because Nepal is an important recipient of India, and I really want to kind of bring their voices into my thesis. So what you see on the right side, the two image of what I had planned, what I had planned initially, and now I'm, the acceptance stage where I'm finally like trying to get in touch with people in Nepal and saying, hey, here I'm sitting, can you talk to me online? And this is also a difficult phase for India with the neighboring countries. So it's not been very easy. And then I think in the last 2 weeks, I'm also looking at documents and what is available online rather than getting stuck and saying, no, I will go there even if it means 10 days of field work. So next. So this is too personal. Like I said, I'm going to share a professional and a bit of personal journey in the last few months. What helped me? I have two supervisors. Rob, some of you might know, is part of the DSAI and DCU supervisors. So they've been very kind and they've been constantly in touch and asking about me. Then there's family, Zoom calls have increased, WhatsApp calls have increased, talking to colleagues based and friends in Dublin or even in India, it's increased. So lots of sleeping, and I'm a Twitter addict, so Twitter is Twitter was one of the spaces where I could kind of connect with more PhD students, and I wish I could add walks and exercises. I've become lazy, but also I think the space and this fear of what will happen to you if you step out is also there. So yeah, so that's been kind of a personal journey, and in between it was I was by myself for a few months, so it was just sitting in this particular tiny room and thinking and trying and working and still keeping myself occupied and connected to the rest of the world. So last slide, please. So this is what I want to leave you guys with today. This is the illustration on a Twitter. Like I said, I'm a Twitter addict, so I'm all the time on it. So I found this very, I found it relevant to me. And as PhD students and in general in life, I think there'll be a lot of uncertainty, and these 5-6 months have been, it's about that. It's also been failure of not writing for 2-3 months and not being able to just even look at some of the articles as basic as newspaper articles sometimes. It's going to happen. Be kind to yourself. It's a matter of time. Some of us have the privilege of time, space, family, but try in whatever little ways you can, be kind to yourself. And if nothing works, just be like me, go to sleep, hoping that next morning will be a better day and you'll feel better. So yeah, and I'm open to talking about my research in the discussion round. If you guys have any questions now or later, along with Garima, I'm happy to talk about more about my research. So that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Rachna. That's wonderful. And thanks for keeping kind of within the time as well. So we have, as you say, a mixture of professional and personal insight. I'm fascinated by the number of times you mentioned sleep. I suppose when you reach my stage of life, it's one of the most precious commodities and hardest to get. So yes, you've read my mind. But back to the business of the day. Let's see if we have any questions or comments for Rachna. She's given us lots of insights into the world of the PhD student in the time of the global PhD student, and yet in the time of COVID, confined in her box. So please, who would like to ask a question?
Can I please start? Sorry, last time I forgot to introduce myself. Neeta Mishra, I am from UCC. I'm hoping everybody introduces themselves. Thanks Rachna, that was a great combination. I wish I could say a few things about my PhD process. I won't, because my supervisor sits here. My ex-supervisor sits here, I won't say. But I want to ask you something now that it's not just what's happening in COVID situation that you have to revisit your original, fieldwork process. From what I hear, Nepal and India are not in great political terms also right now, and Nepal is claiming parts of Uttarakhand as its own land. Do you really see yourself going to Nepal even if COVID is under control?
Dr. Lahiff, do you want me to take the questions or all the questions together or one at a time?
Oh, I mean, I think you can take them one at a time, but
okay.
don't get drawn into any controversial political discussions. Don't get provoked.
Yeah, so that's one of the main reasons why I didn't try and share research findings. And I was having this chat with Neeta that I'm not going to be touching upon my findings and what I'm trying to do in the field in detail. Because it's bilateral aid, it's very political, it's very sensitive. And somebody had told me, oh, why is aid so, why do you have to be careful? So I think they didn't realize that how much that aid is a political tool, and it's very much of a foreign policy tool that's used. For me, I think, just sorry, quickly to answer your question, no, I think the hype that's there in the media is very different to what actually people feel about each other, and how leaders portray themselves in the media for their own constituencies or to get the vote bank is very different to what people feel. I have been trying to get in touch with people. The only problem for me right now is an online platform. But if I do get hold of somebody, they are very nice. People are ready to give me a lot of time. It's not been very many people right now, but yeah, it's not been so difficult as I thought it would be, because in the last 6 months, yes, the relationship has worsened.
Great. Thanks so much. Anybody else want to come in with a question or comment for Rachna? Oh, go on. I know you want to. Could I perhaps ask the question, just, sorry, I was going to take you off your topic ever so slightly, but just maybe to reflect for a few moments on your own transnational sort of experience being in Ireland and back in India, and then maybe back in Ireland again. How have you found that as a mode of working, and maybe the different types of influences you'll be picking up in the different countries?
So, I mean, thankfully, in terms of PhD thing, I don't think there's much difference being in Dublin or here, because I can access resources, I can get hold of my supervisors, but in terms of personal, yes, I think I am kind of missing the PhD cohorts that you sit and chat and be there for each other. But thankfully, the colleagues and friends, we've been trying to have once a month Zoom calls, at least we do catch up. But like you said, 6 months ago, I think being online and being connected on WhatsApp would have been, very different to what it is today. And we're so comfortable, and I don't really feel much of a difference in the last 2-3 months. But the weather, yes, the weather is kind of, in the summer when I had to write some 15,000 words for the submission, it was 45 degrees here, and we didn't really, so it was difficult on that level. But mentally, it's not been that much of an issue. Physically, yes.
Because it's very unusual for Irish people to hear people complaining about weather elsewhere, because we're so used to people complaining about weather here. I'm glad that's not one of your complaints. And so I think really what you're saying is the importance of horizontal networks, as you say, your peer group. Some years ago, I can remember my own PhD, and very close engagement with people who were really not studying anything like what I was studying. I mean, we were all in development, but there were very diverse topics. But that's so refreshing, because I suppose we tend to focus on the vertical relationship with your supervisor, and then maybe your field informants and others as well. But you've mentioned your peer group in DCU. I noticed you also very kindly referred to your friends and family, the wider network. We mustn't forget that they're part of the support structure too. They're part of what keeps you kind of mentally and otherwise stable, and gets you through those perhaps difficult times. But is there anybody else who'd like to come in, either on what we've heard from Rachna, or from earlier on from Garima? Anybody want to? We're nearly going to be out of time soon. So any kind of general reflections or cross-cutting issues? Ami, I don't know. Are you smiling there? Would you like to say anything, please, if you wish, or anybody else?
Sophie is raising her hand. So
I
didn't see the hand. Sophie, please come in.
Okay, all these Zoom squares are hard to keep track of. But thank you to both speakers. I think I've had a question in the chat box, but it's again hard to keep track of. I was wondering, for both of you, do you think that post-COVID research will be the same as pre-COVID, or will all researchers have to adapt to this new way of learning from each other and creating these new networks and connections? Because with all the bad that COVID has brought, I'm sure that it's brought new innovative ways of thinking and researching. So I was interested in what you think the space of research will be like post-COVID time.
Garima, do you want to go on that first?
Go ahead, Rachna.
Okay, I think for me, I mean, as a development practitioner, and as someone who has interest and who feels very passionate being in the ground and meeting people, and it gives me kicks. So I kind of feel very hindered, and I feel sad, and this is why I keep postponing my methodology, finalizing my methodology plan, because in the hope that I'll be able to just talk to people in Nepal, even if it means 5 days, That's also why I'm not heading to Dublin right now, because even though the healthcare system here is not so great, but we're still taking the risk, because for me, to get to Kathmandu is just an hour's flight, but to come from Dublin is at least 14-15 hours. So there's still that hope that I'll still be able to do it. And I'm probably a bit old school in the sense, I don't think online platform will give me that kind of data or feeling connectedness to people. And worse comes to worse, and if my supervisor say no, not happening, you're not stepping to Nepal, the plan is to use a research assistant in Nepal who would probably do a video call. And I'm sharing this because it's one of the new techniques that people are exploring, people especially who are based in the northern, global north, where they have local researchers who go. And that's the plan that I also intend to have, right? I mean, if nothing works out, that I ask someone in Kathmandu that, hey, go to these 2 districts and talk to people and hold the video for me. I might not be able to speak Nepali, but I understand a bit of, because it's quite similar to Hindi. So yeah, so that, I mean, that's probably like for February, and I need to submit in September. So you see how close I'm trying to take it to, and trying to take that risk, even if it means 1 or 2 extra months delay in my submission. So
thanks, Rachna. Yeah, Garima, I think you might be getting the final word here. If you'd like to add to that.
I'd just like to say that I'm thankful that I completed a major portion of my fieldwork before COVID, and otherwise it would have been a big challenge because I had to visit various villages for my fieldwork in various remote corners of this region. In fact, this Bundelkhand region, it's infested by dacoits also. Like when I went there for my fieldwork, you couldn't step out after 6 p.m. in the evening. You have to be with someone. The villages were just empty. The extent of migration, it was insane. That was in March or April. People had already started migrating, and so I'm glad I finished it before COVID. Otherwise, it would have been nearly impossible, and I don't like it. It would have been really uncertain.
Thanks, Garima. We're certainly living in, whether we're in Europe, especially in Southern Europe, or in South Asia, we are living in very uncertain times. And yeah, uncertain times can be exciting for researchers as well. Ami, would you like to come in and sort of formally wrap up the proceedings? It's really just all I can do is thank everybody, especially Garima and Rachna, for their wonderful presentations, and for the organizers for bringing us together, and for everybody who joined in, whether you spoke or not. I hope you got something from it, and it's so important to us that you're here, even just as part of the audience. That really makes the event for us. So, Ami, I think I'll pass back to you if you maybe just want to a final remarks.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, now, for everyone for doing chair, Dr. Lahiff, and then Rachna and Garima. Thank you so much for your massive preparation and then great presentation. Like, I really learned a lot, because I don't know, not much things of India, so it's really good to learn. Thank you so much. So Sophie will say something as a closing words. And yeah, actually I wanted to hear the audience, the people who came as an audience, maybe which organization you came from, quickly, or maybe we don't have time.
Maybe people could put it into the chat if they wanted to put their details into the chat. Yeah. We could do it simultaneously. Anybody who has wants to share something, or leave an email or an organizational name, maybe just pop it into the chat for now. That would do it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. So Sophie,
we'll get over to Sophie. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lahiff, for your great sharing of today. I think it goes to show you stuck within the time and kept everybody on board. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to our 2 wonderful speakers. I've really learned a lot from you, especially as an undergraduate student. I took a list of words to go Google afterwards, because it's very theoretical and very niche. So it was really fascinating to learn from both of you. It's a really great place to connect and to learn from one another. So I really, really appreciate that. And thank you, Ami, for co-chairing this event and for introducing everybody so well. And we've had a lot of audience members, and I see everybody's putting that their place where they're from and their organization into the chat box. So if we could keep this chat box, and I know the video is recorded for later times, so if you want to connect with other people, that will be there for you. I think Ami will be doing that. So that's all from me. Thank you all for showing up and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And if anybody else would like to say anything, please take the floor.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Lahiff, and thank you so much, and Amy and Neeta for giving me this opportunity to present. I was a bit hesitant, and Neeta was like, no, just give it a try and share whatever you can. So thank you so much for all the coordination, Amy. And thank you, Garima, for a detailed presentation. Thank you so much. I learned a lot.
Thank you, Rachna, for your presentation. Thank you everyone for giving me this opportunity to present. Thank you, Dr. Lahiff. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, on that happy note, I think I should probably bid everybody goodbye and have a good weekend. I know the weekend has probably already started for some of our audience, and I hope you have a good one and get some of that relaxation, and we'll be back to another hectic week, I'm sure, next week. Thanks again so much to everybody. And
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
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 Thank you so much.